My name's Brooks Porter, and I never thought I'd say this. But the night my brother came back into my life changed everything I believed about family, loyalty, and fear. He thought I didn't see him slip something into my old backpack. But I did. And when I checked what it was, my blood ran cold. 30 minutes later, the police were banging on my front door. Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from? Hit like, subscribe, and let's unravel this together in part 2. I hadn't seen my brother Ethan in almost a year when he called me out of the blue that Thursday night. His voice trembled a little, though he tried to sound casual. Hey, Brooks, mind if I crash at your place for a few days? There was something in his tone, an edge, like he was trying too hard to keep his cool. Still, he was my brother. Despite everything we'd been through, I couldn't say no. When Ethan showed up later that night, it was already close to midnight. The rain had just stopped, leaving the streets glistening beneath the streetlights. I remember standing by the kitchen window, watching his old gray sedan pull up into my driveway. He stepped out, dragging a small duffel bag behind him. His jacket looked heavier than usual, thick, stuffed, and uneven, like something bulky was inside one of the inner pockets. I opened the door, forcing a smile. Hey man, long time. Yeah, he said, grinning weakly. Been a while. I noticed his hands were shaking as he took off his shoes. The kind of tremor you don't get from cold weather, but from nerves. He didn't look terrible, but something was off. His eyes darted around my small living room, scanning everything. The windows, the hallway, the corners. Like he was checking to make sure we were alone. I tried to lighten the mood. You hungry? I got leftover pizza. Nah, I'm good. That was strange. Ethan never turned down food. Growing up, he was always the one sneaking into the kitchen for midnight snacks. He sat on the couch, rubbing his palms together. Nice place, Brooks. You fixed the drywall, huh? Yeah. Took a while, but I managed. He nodded absently. His mind was clearly somewhere else. For the next hour, we talked, or tried to. I asked how Mom was doing, where he'd been staying, whether he'd found a job since the last one fell through. But his answers were short, vague. She's fine, he said. I've been around. When I asked, around where, he gave a half smile. Doesn't matter. I'm here now, right? The silence after that was heavy. He checked his phone several times, the screen's glow flashing against his tense face. Every time it buzzed, he winced slightly, then turned it face down on the table. Something about that made me uneasy. Everything okay? I asked. He hesitated. Yeah, just some people who won't leave me alone. What kind of people? He laughed, but it sounded hollow. You don't want to know. He changed the subject quickly, asking about my old truck, my job at the auto shop, anything that would steer us away from him. I let him, but the tension didn't fade. It hung in the air like static. After a while, I went to the kitchen to grab us both some water. That's when I caught it. A small but strange moment that stuck with me. While I was filling the glasses, I saw Ethan through the reflection in the window. He was sitting forward on the couch, his hands pressed against his jacket pocket, like he was checking if something was still there. Then he looked toward the front window, pulled the curtain aside just enough to peek outside, and let it fall again. When I came back in, he jumped slightly, forcing another smile. Man, you look tired, I said. He chuckled nervously. Yeah, long drive. He finished his water fast and stood up. You still got that old camping backpack? The green one. That threw me off. Yeah, I think so. It's in the closet. What? He shrugged. Just wondering. I might borrow it tomorrow, if that's cool. Sure, I said slowly. You going somewhere? He didn't answer right away. Just maybe. Haven't decided yet. Something about his tone made me uneasy again. We called it a night not long after. Ethan took the guest room, but I couldn't sleep. I could hear him pacing inside, his footsteps slow and uneven. Once, I heard him unzip something. Maybe that duffel bag, then silence again. My thoughts started spinning. Ethan had always been a mess growing up. Bad jobs, gambling, impulsive spending. But this was different. This was fear. The kind that makes a man look over his shoulder every few minutes. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, telling myself I was overthinking it. He was probably just in trouble with money again. Maybe some debt collectors breathing down his neck. That would explain the paranoia. Still, the way he kept clutching his jacket. The way he looked outside. It didn't feel like just money. When I finally drifted off, it was almost dawn. The next morning, I found Ethan already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with his phone and a cup of coffee he clearly hadn't touched. His duffel bag was zipped and ready. You heading out early? I asked. Just running a quick errand, he said, standing up. Hey, can I borrow that backpack? Yeah, sure, I said, pointing toward the hallway closet. He grabbed it, smiled faintly. Thanks, man. I'll be back later. As he turned toward the door, I noticed something. His jacket pocket looked lighter, flatter, like whatever was inside last night was gone. The front door closed, and silence filled the house again. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the backpack resting on the chair beside the table. Something deep in my gut whispered, he hid something. I didn't know what. I didn't know why. But I knew one thing. Whatever Ethan was mixed up in, I was already part of it now. The next morning was unusually quiet. The kind of silence that feels too heavy for an ordinary day. The rain had stopped, the air outside cool and damp. Sunlight poured weakly through the blinds, striping my kitchen floor with pale gold. I stood there, half awake, making coffee while my mind replayed everything from last night. Ethan had left early, taking my green backpack with him. He'd said he was running an errand, but that could mean anything with him. He'd always had a way of saying things that sounded harmless, but left you uneasy afterward. I tried to shake the thought away. Maybe I was just paranoid. Maybe I'd watched too many crime shows. He was my brother. He wouldn't drag me into anything dangerous, right? I sat at the table, sipping coffee, when I noticed something. Ethan's duffel bag was still in the corner of the living room. I hadn't seen him grab it when he left. That was odd. I walked over, unzipped it slightly, nothing but clothes, a phone charger, a pair of old sneakers. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling something was off. Hours passed. Noon came and went. No text. No call. Around 2 p.m., the sound of gravel crunching outside pulled me from my thoughts. Ethan's car was back. He came in quietly, without knocking. His hair was damp, his face pale. His eyes darted to the backpack I'd placed on the chair. Hey, I said cautiously. Everything okay? He gave me a weak smile. Yeah, just tired. You mind if I crash for a bit? Sure. You, done with that errand? Yeah, he muttered, setting the backpack down by the door. Thanks again, bro. He disappeared into the guest room and closed the door. For the next hour, I tried to work on some invoices for the shop, but I couldn't focus. Every time I glanced toward that backpack, something twisted in my gut. Then it happened. I went to grab something from the fridge, and as I passed the hallway mirror, I caught a reflection. Ethan, crouched near the backpack. His back was to me. His hands were moving fast, deliberate. He unzipped the bag halfway, pulled something small and wrapped from his jacket pocket, and slid it inside. Then he zipped it again, smooth and quiet. He didn't notice me watching from the reflection. My heart thudded. My skin prickled. He stood up, looked around the room once, then walked back into the guest room like nothing happened. I stood frozen, staring at that reflection even after he was gone. Something in me whispered, "You saw that. Don't pretend you didn't." I walked over to the backpack slowly, careful not to make a sound. My mind was racing, but my body felt detached, like I was moving on instinct. What had he just hidden? I didn't touch it. Not yet. I sat back on the couch, waiting, pretending to scroll through my phone when he came out again later. Hey, he said, voice casual but eyes avoiding mine. I'm heading out for a walk. Clear my head. Sure thing, I said. Take your time. He left. I waited until I heard his footsteps fade down the driveway. Then I went for the backpack. Every sound in the house felt louder now. The ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I pulled the backpack onto the table and unzipped it carefully. Inside was the same stuff I'd kept from old camping trips. An empty water bottle, a flashlight, some crumpled receipts. But near the bottom corner, something solid pressed against the fabric lining. I reached in. My fingers brushed cold metal. I pulled out a small black pouch, tightly wrapped with electrical tape. It was heavier than it looked. I turned it over in my hands. It didn't jingle like coins or clink like tools. It was just a dense, silent weight. What the hell is this? I muttered. For a long moment, I just stared at it, debating. I shouldn't open it. It wasn't mine. But curiosity and fear were already clawing at me. I sat down, took a deep breath, and started peeling the tape. It came off slowly, sticky and rough. When the last layer came free, I unzipped the pouch halfway and froze. Inside were stacks of cash, neatly bundled with rubber bands. Dozens of them. My first thought, he's in deep trouble. I lifted one stack. It was hundreds, crisp, new, No bank wrappers. My stomach churned. Underneath the cash, something else caught my eye. A flash drive, black, small, taped to the inside flap. I pulled it free, hesitating before plugging it into my laptop. My hands were shaking now. It took a few seconds to load, but when it did, I saw several folders, each labeled with random letters and numbers. Inside were photos, documents, and encrypted files. The first photo stopped me cold. It showed a man lying on the floor, a dark smear spreading beneath him. His face was partially visible, unconscious, maybe dead. The background looked like a basement. I scrolled further. Another folder contained scanned ID cards, addresses, spreadsheets, names I didn't recognize. A chill ran through me. Was Ethan involved in something criminal? Stolen data? Blackmail? Worse? I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't. But there it was, undeniable, sitting in front of me. I yanked the flash drive out, heart hammering. For a few seconds, I just sat there in silence, trying to breathe. What was I supposed to do? Call the cops? Call Ethan? Pretend I didn't see anything? Every option felt dangerous. Then I heard it, the sound of the back door creaking open. Ethan was home. Panic surged. I didn't have time to hide what I'd found. On instinct, I rewrapped the pouch, shoved the tape roughly back on, and zipped it shut. Then I made a split-second decision that even now, I still question. I slipped the pouch into his jacket pocket, the same one I'd seen him reach into before. By the time he walked in, I was sitting casually on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone. "Hey," he said, setting his keys down. "You okay?" "Yeah, just tired," I replied, forcing a yawn. He smiled faintly, but I could tell he was watching me, gauging my reactions. His hand brushed his jacket pocket once, then fell away. That tiny movement told me everything. He was checking if it was still there. When he went to his room, I let out the breath I'd been holding. My heart was still pounding. I didn't know what was going on, but one thing was clear: whatever he was hiding wasn't something innocent. And now, I was part of it. I told myself I'd confront him that evening. Demand answers. But before I could, the night would take a turn that I'll never forget. When I got home that evening, I tossed my backpack onto my bed like usual. I was still fuming about what I saw in the garage, my brother, Jake, shoving something small, metallic, and secretive into my bag. At first, I thought it was some kind of joke. Jake and I had a complicated relationship. He was the golden boy of the family. Charming, athletic, always finding ways to talk his way out of trouble, while I was the quiet one, the observer, the responsible son. But even with all our differences, Jake never crossed the line into something shady. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the bag. A faint whiff of oil and metal filled the air. It wasn't the smell of books or gym clothes. My stomach tightened. "What the hell did you do, Jake?" I whispered. My hands trembled slightly as I unzipped the main pocket. Inside, beneath my laptop sleeve, I saw a small black velvet pouch, one that definitely wasn't mine. I pulled it out carefully and felt the weight of something hard inside. When I opened the pouch, I froze. It was a silver chain necklace, but the pendant caught my attention first. A polished, intricate crest of some sort, engraved with strange initials and a tiny, blood-red gemstone in the center. The chain itself was heavy, too expensive looking for anything Jake could afford. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. There was blood, faint but visible, smeared on one of the pendant's edges. For a few seconds, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. I rubbed my thumb against it. The dark stain didn't disappear. "What the?" I whispered, my heart pounding. I grabbed a napkin and wiped at the pendant. Nothing came off. That's when I noticed something else inside the pouch, a folded piece of paper. I pulled it out. It was damp, as if it had been hidden somewhere dirty or wet. It read, in hastily written block letters, "Do not trust him. He knows." My whole body went numb. I stared at the note, then at the necklace. My mind started racing. What was Jake hiding? Why would he sneak something like this into my bag? My first instinct was to confront him immediately. But then a thought hit me. What if he's in trouble? Jake had been acting weird lately, sneaking out at night, locking his room, taking mysterious phone calls that he quickly ended when I walked in. I'd brushed it off as him having some new secret girlfriend or shady side hustle. But this was on another level. The necklace felt wrong somehow. Like it wasn't just jewelry, like it carried something heavy with it. Then a sound outside my room made me jump. Jake's voice. He was back. Without thinking, I quickly slid the necklace back into the pouch and shoved it deep into my backpack again. Then I zipped it up and tried to look normal. A knock followed. "Hey, man, you home?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah." The door creaked open. Jake stepped in, his usual easy grin plastered across his face, but his eyes flickered toward the bag on my bed for a split second. And I caught it. That look. It wasn't casual. It wasn't brotherly. It was anxious. "Long day, huh?" he said, his voice tight. "Yeah," I replied, trying to sound normal. "What's up?" He shrugged. "Nothing much. Just wanted to borrow your charger." He walked over, pretending to look around for it, but I could tell his focus was elsewhere. His eyes darted toward the backpack again. My pulse pounded in my ears. I decided to play along. "It's on the desk," I said, standing up slightly. He grabbed it, and for a second, his hand brushed against my bag. Just a second, but it was enough for me to notice how tense he was. "Thanks," he muttered. "See you later." He left quickly. As soon as the door closed, I exhaled sharply. My mind was screaming, he's hiding something big. And whatever it is, he didn't want me to find it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening for any sounds from Jake's room. Around midnight, I heard his door creak open. Soft footsteps. The faint squeak of the stairs. I got up, slowly opened my door, and peeked out. Jake was heading outside, wearing a hoodie, his phone clutched in his hand. Without thinking, I followed. The night air was cold and heavy. Jake walked quickly toward the old shed at the back of our yard, the one Dad used to use before it became Jake's private hideout. I stayed far enough behind not to be seen. Inside, I saw the glow of his phone light. He was talking to someone, but his voice was low and tense. "I told you I handled it," he whispered. "No, he doesn't know." I made sure of it. My blood turned to ice. "He doesn't know." Was he talking about me? There was a pause. Then Jake said, "Look, I'll bring it tomorrow. Just keep your mouth shut until then." That's when I knew I couldn't wait anymore. When he left the shed and started back toward the house, I quietly slipped in. The place smelled like gasoline and rust. On the table were old tools, cans of paint, and my stomach dropped. A small plastic container with a red seal. Inside it, through the foggy plastic, I could see jewelry. Dozens of pieces. Gold chains. Watches. Rings. All expensive. And at the top of the pile, an empty slot shaped exactly like the necklace I'd found in my bag. That's when the realization hit me like a freight train. Jake wasn't just hiding something. He was stealing. And he was using me to cover for him. I stumbled back, my heart slamming in my chest. My hands shook as I closed the container, terrified he'd come back. Back in my room, I paced like a maniac. What was I supposed to do now? Turn in my own brother? Confront him? Then a darker thought crept in. That blood on the necklace. What if this wasn't just theft? I needed to know more before I made a move. That's when I decided, the next time Jake tried to move it, I'd be ready. But I didn't realize that next time would come a lot sooner than I thought. The next morning, I woke up with that sick feeling in my gut, the kind that tells you you're about to do something that can't be undone. Jake was gone when I came downstairs. Mom said he had gone to help a friend move some stuff. Yeah, right. Move some stolen jewelry, maybe. I barely touched breakfast. My mind was racing through everything I'd seen the night before. The shed, the jewelry, the blood on that necklace, and the note. Do not trust him. He knows. Who had written that? Who was he? Jake? Or someone else? I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening, something that went beyond a few stolen trinkets. By noon, I made up my mind. If Jake was trying to use me, then I was going to use him right back. I grabbed my backpack and checked the velvet pouch again. The necklace was still there, glinting faintly under the light. It looked harmless, but I knew it wasn't. I decided to set a trap. If Jake came to me about it, or tried to retrieve it, I'd know exactly where I stood. But if he didn't, that meant he was either panicking or planning something worse. That afternoon, I got my chance. Jake returned home just after lunch. He seemed calm, too calm, but I could tell by the way he kept glancing toward my room that he hadn't forgotten about what he'd hidden in my bag. He tried to act casual. "Hey, you busy later? I might go meet some buddies, maybe grab a drink." I pretended to scroll through my phone. "Nah, I'm just chilling." "You?" He shrugged. "Might borrow your bag, though. Mine's kinda torn. You cool with that?" I froze for half a second before forcing a grin. "Sure, man. Just let me clear it out first." I walked to my room, heart hammering, and pretended to rummage through the bag. Then, When I came back out, I said, "Here you go." But what Jake didn't know was that I'd slipped my old voice recorder into the side pocket. A small, nearly invisible black device Dad had given me back in college. I hadn't used it in years, but it still worked. If Jake planned to meet someone or say something incriminating, I'd have proof. Jake took the bag with a casual thanks and disappeared out the door. I watched from the window as he got into his car and drove off. Not toward the bar like he said, but toward the industrial district. I knew that area. It was where all the pawn shops and repair shops were. I grabbed my bike and followed at a distance, keeping just far enough back that he wouldn't notice me. He parked outside a rundown building that looked like it hadn't seen customers in years. A flickering neon sign read, "East Side Repairs and Collectibles." I watched as Jake stepped out, slung my backpack over his shoulder, and entered the shop. I waited 5 minutes before creeping closer. Through the grimy glass window, I could barely make out shapes. Jake standing across from a heavy-set man in a leather jacket. They were arguing. I couldn't hear them clearly, but their body language said enough. Jake's hands moved fast, defensive, while the man pointed angrily toward the bag. Then Jake unzipped it. The man leaned in, examining something inside. The necklace. I ducked quickly as the man slammed his fist on the counter. I heard Jake say something like, "I told you it was clean." The man snarled something back, and then I heard it. "You think I don't know it's hers? You're insane for keeping that thing, Jake." My heart dropped. Hers? Who was her? The man continued, his voice muffled but heated. "You shouldn't have gone near that house. They already found the others missing. You're being watched." I backed away, my hands shaking. "Jake, what had you done?" I waited until Jake left the shop, looking furious, and followed him again, keeping low behind parked cars. He didn't go home. Instead, he drove to a small park near the edge of town, one of those quiet places no one visits anymore. He sat on a bench, hunched over his phone, probably messaging someone. I stayed hidden behind a tree, watching him. Then his phone rang. He answered quickly. "Yeah, I got it," he said, his voice tense. "But there's a problem." The guy recognized it. Said they're looking for it already. He paused. No, he didn't say who. But he said someone saw me there. "Look, I'll get rid of it tonight. I'll handle it." He hung up and rubbed his face with both hands, muttering something I couldn't catch. Then, suddenly, he froze. His head turned slightly. He looked right in my direction. My heart stopped. For a terrifying few seconds, I was sure he'd seen me. But then he sighed, stood up, and walked back toward his car. I waited until he was gone before I dared to breathe again. Back home, I plugged the recorder into my laptop. I replayed the audio, fast-forwarding through static until I reached the shop part. I could hear everything. Jake, the man, the necklace, the warning. My chest tightened as I listened to the man's words again. "You think I don't know it's hers?" Hers. I Googled local theft cases, and within minutes, I found it. A police report, filed 3 days earlier. A woman named Angela Whitmore had reported several pieces of valuable jewelry stolen from her home, including one matching the description of the necklace. But there was more. According to the report, she had been assaulted during the break-in and was still in the hospital. The blood, the panic, the message in the pouch, it all started clicking into place. Jake hadn't just stolen something. He'd been involved in something violent. That night, Jake came home late again. His clothes smelled faintly of smoke. I waited in my room, pretending to be asleep. He didn't knock this time. He just quietly entered, grabbed the bag from my chair, and started going through it. But here's the thing. The necklace wasn't there anymore. I'd taken it out earlier. Instead, I'd replaced it with a cheap silver pendant from one of Mom's old trinket boxes. Jake didn't notice. He zipped the bag, sighed in relief, and whispered to himself, "Finally." Then he left. As soon as the door closed, I called the police. I didn't give my name. I just said, "Check the East Side Repair shop. Ask about Jake Myers. He's got something you're looking for." My hands were trembling so hard I almost dropped the phone. I wasn't proud of it, turning in my brother like that, but I couldn't stay silent anymore. What I didn't know, though, was that by morning things would spiral completely out of control. Because when the police came, they weren't there just to question Jake. They came with a warrant. And 30 minutes later, the flashing red and blue lights filled our driveway. I'll never forget that morning. It was just after sunrise when I heard the sound of tires crunching gravel outside the house. At first, I thought it was the garbage truck or maybe one of the neighbors leaving early for work. But then I saw it, flashing red and blue lights bouncing off my bedroom walls. My heart jumped into my throat. I went to the window and peeked through the blinds. 2 police cruisers were parked in the driveway. A third one pulled up moments later. And then came the knock. Firm, authoritative, echoing through the house like a warning shot. Mom came out of her room, confused and still in her robe. What on earth? Brooks, what's going on? Before I could answer, Dad appeared behind her, his face pale. Stay back, he said quietly. I'll handle this. He walked to the door, opened it halfway, and froze. Mr. Porter? One of the officers asked. We have a warrant to search the premises. We're looking for Jacob Myers. Jake. My stomach turned. He doesn't live here, Dad said quickly. He's just visiting. What's this about? But the officer had already stepped forward, handing over a folded paper. We have reason to believe he's involved in an ongoing investigation related to a burglary and assault last week. Mom gasped. Assault. I could see the color drain from her face. Meanwhile, I stood frozen in the hallway, trying to breathe quietly, to keep my heart from pounding out of my chest. This is it, I thought. They found out. Within minutes, the officers were inside. One went upstairs. Another began checking the garage. 2 more started questioning Dad and Mom in the living room. And then, Jake came down the stairs. He'd clearly just woken up, messy hair, still half asleep. He squinted at the flashing lights outside. What's going on? Jacob Myers? The lead officer asked. Jake blinked. Yeah. You're under arrest for possession of stolen property, burglary, and obstruction of justice. Jake's face went blank. Wait, what? That's insane. What property? The officer pulled out a small plastic bag. Inside was the fake necklace I'd swapped into the backpack. Jake's eyes widened. He started shaking his head, confused. That's not even real. Tell it to the judge, the officer said. He turned Jake around and began reading him his rights. Mom screamed, no, there's a mistake. Jake would never. But Jake wasn't looking at her. He was staring right at me. His expression changed, from confusion, to shock, to realization. And in that moment, I knew he understood. He knew I had set him up. They led him outside, handcuffs glinting under the morning sun. The neighbors peeked from their porches. Someone across the street recorded it on their phone. Dad stood in silence, his jaw tight. Mom was crying uncontrollably. I stood frozen in the doorway, my legs heavy like cement. One of the detectives turned to me. Brooks Porter, right? I nodded. He scribbled something on his notepad. You might need to come by the station later today, just for a few questions. My mouth went dry. Sure, yeah. He nodded, then followed the others back to the cruisers. As the cars pulled away, the sound of the sirens faded into the distance, leaving behind a heavy silence that filled the house like fog. Dad was the first to break it. You knew something, he said quietly. Didn't you? I didn't answer. He turned to me, eyes burning with anger. Brooks, what did you do? I swallowed hard. I found something. In my bag. Jake put it there. What was it? A necklace. Blood on it. I think it was stolen. Mom's sobs grew louder. Oh my God. Dad rubbed his forehead, pacing back and forth. You should have told me. You should have come to us. I couldn't. I shouted. He was lying to us. He was using us. I didn't know what else to do. The words echoed through the room. For a long moment, no one said anything. Then Dad sat down heavily on the couch and whispered, He's your brother, Brooks. Yeah, I said, my voice breaking. He was. That afternoon, I drove to the police station. They brought me into a small interview room. Metal table, 2 chairs, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee. Detective Harris, the one from earlier, sat across from me. He placed a folder on the table. We just need you to confirm a few things, he said. He opened the folder, revealing photos, the necklace, the pouch, the shed, and then a picture of a woman, Angela Whitmore. Do you know this woman? He asked. I shook my head. No, I just read about her online after. I hesitated. After I found the jewelry. Did your brother mention her? No. Did he tell you where he got the items? Again, I shook my head. Detective Harris leaned back. Here's the thing, Brooks. We've been tracking a small burglary ring for months. Expensive jewelry, antiques, collector's pieces, all sold to underground buyers. He slid another photo toward me, a screenshot of Jake standing outside East Side Repairs. We've had that shop under surveillance for weeks, the detective continued. Your brother's been there 3 times in the last month. I clenched my fists under the table. So he's part of it? I asked. The detective sighed. We think so. But there's more. One of the stolen items had fingerprints, not just his. Someone else's too. My heart skipped. Whose? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, long and hard. Then he said, yours. I froze. That's impossible. I never touched. He held up a hand. Relax. We know you're not involved in the burglaries. But we did find partial prints on the necklace pouch. Probably when you opened it. I exhaled, relief washing over me. But, he continued, the fact that you had it puts you in a gray area. We'll need a formal statement. Fine, I said quickly. I'll tell you everything. So I did. I told him about Jake's visit, the strange behavior, the pouch, the note, the shed, the meeting at East Side Repairs, everything. When I finished, Harris was silent for a moment. Then he said quietly, you did the right thing. I nodded, but it didn't feel right. Because as much as I wanted to believe Jake deserved what was coming, part of me still saw the kid who used to share cereal boxes with me, who protected me from bullies in high school, who made me laugh until I couldn't breathe. Now that same brother was sitting in a cold cell, probably wondering if I'd been the one who tipped them off. And he'd be right. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment the police dragged him out. The look in his eyes, that silent mix of betrayal and heartbreak. I told myself I'd done the right thing, that I'd stopped something dangerous before it got worse. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. If Jake was truly guilty, why did he look so shocked when they arrested him? Why did he keep insisting it wasn't real? And most of all, who had written that note? Do not trust him. He knows. Because the more I thought about it, the less I was sure that he referred to Jake. The next morning, I got a call. Mr. Porter? It was Detective Harris again. We need you to come down to the station. There's been a development. My stomach dropped. What kind of development? He hesitated. Just come in. It's about your brother and the man he met yesterday. As I hung up, a chill ran down my spine. Because the truth I'd uncovered, the one I thought was clear, was only the beginning of something far darker. And before the day was over, I'd find out just how deep Jake had been pulled into it, and how dangerously close I was to being pulled in too. When Detective Harris called that morning, his tone wasn't just serious, it was different. There was a kind of tension in his voice that made me think this wasn't just an update. This was something big. I drove to the station with a pit in my stomach. The sky was gray, heavy with rain, and everything around me felt muted, like the whole world was holding its breath. When I arrived, Harris was waiting in the lobby. Come with me, he said, motioning toward a hallway. We've got something you need to see. We passed through a security door and down a long corridor that smelled like disinfectant and metal. He led me into another interview room, the same one from yesterday, and closed the door behind us. He dropped a folder onto the table and folded his arms. Your brother's been talking, he said. I sat down slowly. About what? About the necklace, Harris replied, and about the people he was working with. My pulse quickened. People? Plural? He nodded. Jake claims he wasn't the one who stole it. He says he was set up, used as a middleman. I frowned. That's ridiculous. I saw him hide it in my bag. Yeah, Harris said. But he says he didn't know what it was, that he was holding on to it for someone else. I leaned forward. Who? That's where things get complicated. Harris opened the folder and slid a photo across the table. It was the man from East Side Repairs. His name's Frank Delaney, Harris said. Ex-con, known for dealing in stolen art and jewelry. But here's the twist. He's not just a fence. He's also an informant. I blinked. An informant? You mean he works for the police? Harris nodded slowly. Undercover. We've been using him to trace a larger ring. He was supposed to recover the stolen pieces quietly. But when your brother showed up with that necklace, things went off script. I stared at the photo, trying to process. So Jake wasn't stealing. He was returning it? Harris exhaled. That's what we're trying to figure out. Because according to Frank's statement, Jake claimed he got the necklace from someone close to Angela Whitmore, the victim. The room seemed to tilt for a second. Wait, I said. From Angela's side? Yeah, Harris said. Apparently, Angela's husband, Richard Whitmore, had serious debts. He'd been selling off her jewelry to pay them. But when she found out and threatened to leave, he panicked. My skin went cold. So you're saying the burglary wasn't random? Harris shook his head. No, we think it was staged. Richard hired someone to fake the robbery so his wife wouldn't find out he was the one who sold her jewelry. But something went wrong. Angela came home early that night. She got hurt in the process. I leaned back, stunned. And Jake? Frank says Jake was hired as a delivery guy to move one of the pieces from the buyer back to the seller when things got too hot. He didn't know the necklace was part of an assault investigation. I buried my face in my hands. Oh my God. It hit me like a wave. Jake hadn't been the criminal. He'd been the pawn. I left the station numb. The rain was pouring now, blurring everything outside my windshield as I sat in the car, trying to think. I'd turned him in. My own brother. And now he was sitting in a cell for something he didn't fully understand. I kept replaying the look he gave me when they handcuffed him. That mix of betrayal and disbelief. I thought I'd been doing the right thing. I thought I was protecting my family. But I'd been blind. Jake wasn't trying to frame me. He was trying to hide the evidence, to protect me. That's why he slipped the pouch into my backpack. Because the police were already onto him, and he thought they'd never search my stuff. And the note, do not trust him. He knows. It wasn't about Jake. It was about Richard Whitmore, the husband, the man who'd faked the whole thing. That night, I went back to my parents' house. The lights were off, and the place felt hollow. Mom was sitting on the couch, clutching a tissue, eyes red from crying. Any news? She asked softly. I nodded slowly. They're saying Jake might not be guilty. She looked up, startled. What? They think he was used, I said. The real person behind it is the victim's husband. She covered her mouth. Oh, Brooks. Dad came in from the kitchen, his face weary. So what happens now? I don't know, I admitted. They're still building the case. Dad sighed, sitting beside Mom. I told you, son, nothing's ever simple with Jake. He always finds trouble, even when he's trying to do the right thing. For once, I didn't argue. The next morning, I drove back to the station, hoping to see Jake. After some paperwork, they let me into the visiting area, thick glass separating us, the kind of room that smells like bleach and regret. He walked in, escorted by a guard, and sat across from me. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then he picked up the phone. Didn't expect to see you, he said flatly. I know, I said quietly. I'm sorry. He didn't answer. I didn't know what was going on, Jake, I continued. I thought you were trying to drag me into something. He laughed bitterly. Yeah, well, I was trying to get you out of it. My throat tightened. I found the note, I said. The one in the pouch. Do not trust him. He knows. You didn't write that, did you? Jake shook his head. No, Frank did. He tried to warn me that Whitmore's people were watching. But by the time I figured it out, I'd already been made the fall guy. So everything I saw was half the truth, Jake said. I went to Frank because I thought he could help me fix it quietly. Then you followed me, and I realized I'd dragged you right into the middle of it. I stared down at the table. Jake, forget it, he said. You did what you thought was right. I looked up, but I was wrong. He smirked, shaking his head. You always were. For the first time since his arrest, a hint of that old brotherly sarcasm slipped through. And somehow, that made it worse. When I left the station, the air felt heavier than before. I called Detective Harris. There has to be something I can do, I said. Something to help him. There might be, Harris said. We're arranging a sting operation, one that could expose Whitmore's involvement. But it's risky, and we might need your help. My help? I repeated. You're the only person Jake trusts, he said. And if we want to catch the real buyer, we need him to think you're still part of this. I hesitated. You're asking me to go undercover? Not exactly, Harris said. Just play along. Act like you're helping Jake finish the deal. We'll be watching. I closed my eyes, taking a long breath. Everything in me screamed to walk away, to let the police handle it. But another part, the part that still remembered the brother who once saved me from drowning when I was 10, whispered that I owed him this. Okay, I said finally. Tell me what to do. That night, I didn't sleep at all, because by sunrise, I'd be walking straight into a setup designed for people who never walk back out. And if it went wrong, the next person the police would come for wouldn't be Jake. It would be me. The days following Caleb's arrest felt like a blur of silence, grief, and paperwork. My house was emptier than ever, yet my mind was louder than it had ever been. I couldn't stop replaying the look on my brother's face as the police handcuffed him. The mixture of shame, relief, and the strange calm of someone who'd been waiting to get caught. Caleb had always been the wild one, the one who chased risks and ignored warnings. But sitting there on that cold night, watching him in the back of the squad car, I realized something painful. He hadn't just been reckless. He'd been desperate. Desperate to fix something. Desperate to save himself, and maybe, in his twisted way, to protect me. 3 days later, I got a call from the county jail. It was Caleb. His voice was quiet, subdued. "Brooks, I don't even know where to start." "Try the truth," I said. My tone was harsher than I intended, but I didn't apologize. He sighed. "That money wasn't from some scam. It was from a job I took. Illegal, yeah, but I thought it'd pay off Mom's old medical debt. The one that's still in your name." That hit me like a punch to the chest. "What are you talking about? Mom's bills were cleared years ago." He laughed bitterly. "That's what you thought. Turns out some collector never processed the insurance claim. It doubled in interest. They came after me, but when they realized the name on the paperwork was yours, they threatened to sue you." I panicked. The line went silent. All I could hear was the low hum of static. He continued, voice cracking. "I thought if I made it disappear, you'd never know. I didn't mean to drag you into it, Brooks. I swear." When I hung up, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the same spot on the wall. The truth didn't excuse what he'd done, but it changed everything. My brother hadn't betrayed me out of greed. He'd done it out of fear and guilt. I called his lawyer the next day, offering to help verify the debt trail. Turned out Caleb was right. The collection agency had mishandled the file for years. What started as a $6,000 bill had ballooned into nearly $50,000. I managed to get the hospital's legal department involved. With proof that the claim was valid and the collectors were acting outside regulation, charges were dropped against Caleb within 2 weeks. When I went to pick him up, he looked like a ghost, thinner, older, humbled. "Guess I owe you one," he said, giving me a half-smile. I shook my head. "No, man. We owe each other better than this." We didn't talk much for a while after that. Not because of anger, but because we were both trying to process everything. Caleb started therapy through a community rehab program. He told me he wanted to make things right, not just for me, but for himself. And for once, I believed him. As for me, I learned something that stuck. Family isn't about blind trust. It's about earned trust. It's about holding someone accountable, but not abandoning them when they fail. A month later, I found an envelope in my mailbox. It was from Caleb. Inside was a short note written in his messy handwriting. "Brooks, I know I screwed up, but that night, when you saw what I hid, when you didn't turn your back on me even after everything, that's the moment I realized what kind of brother you are. You didn't save me from the police. You saved me from myself. I won't waste that second chance." Caleb, I must have read that letter 10 times. And for the first time in a long while, I felt peace. It's been 6 months now. Caleb found steady work with a local construction crew. He comes by every Sunday for dinner, usually bringing a bottle of cheap beer and too many stories. Sometimes, I catch him glancing at my backpack, the same one that started it all, sitting by the door. He always smiles, and I smile back, because we both know what that moment represents. A mistake, yes, but also forgiveness and growth. If there's one thing I learned through all of this, it's that the truth always finds a way out, whether you want it to or not. And sometimes, the truth doesn't destroy you. It rebuilds you. Caleb and I still have a long road ahead, but at least now, we're walking it together. So, what would you have done if you found something strange your brother hid in your backpack? Would you confront him right away, or play it smart like I did? Let me know in the comments. I really want to hear your thoughts. If this story hit you in any way, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that family is complicated, but worth fighting for. Thanks for watching, friends. Take care of yourselves and each other. See you in the next story.